Good day and welcome. Today I'm going to talk about Hardwired, which is a 1986 novel by Walter Jon Williams. Uh, this is one of the classics of original cyberpunk. Neuromancer, Hardwired, Snowed Crash, those are going to be your three big cyberpunk books. Hardwired is the story of Cowboy, who is a rigger. If you're familiar with Shadowrun, he basically has um, a computer enhancements that hook into his nervous system, and he's able to plug them into various machines, specifically planes and tanks, and use a neural interface to drive/fly them around. Um, he had originally fought against the orbitals. So the book is set against mankind has gone into orbit, and in orbit, they are able to make things in zero gravity that can't be made on Earth, and so Earth really becomes a source of resources to the orbitals. And at some point, Earth rebelled against the orbitals, who they felt were exploiting them, and the orbitals responded by dropping asteroids on major cities, wiping them out. And the Earth's response to that was, okay, sorry, we won't do this again, sir. Um, there are some people who fight against it. Cowboy is one of them. He was in the original orbital war, which Earth lost very badly. And he's been scraping out a living as a smuggler, more or less. I mean, he's more or less a smuggler. And one of the interesting things is that in a lot of the cyberpunk novels, which uh, obviously did not come true, is you see breakdowns in the states. So Cowboy, for example, is smuggling prescription drugs from the orbits from Colorado to Virginia, and there are the various states now all have their own militias and their own tariffs, etc. um, and so the United States is still the United States, but the states are exerting a lot more independence. The centralization that we see today is moving back, which is a very, very common theme in a lot of those early cyberpunk novels. And again, as mentioned, we went the opposite direction. There we are. Um, so that's Cowboy. He's uh, he's a rigger, a Panzer runner, I think they call him in the book. Um, and he secretly wants to start another war with the orbitals, except this time he can win it. But the reality is that Earth is not in a position to do that. So he's making a living as a smuggling and being tough and independent and pretending like the war never happened. Really, he's an interesting guy. I'm making him sound a lot worse than he is. He's an interesting character. Someone, that icon of the American West. The cowboy, hence his name, who's tough, rugged individualist. In a society that does not have room for them. Sarah, who's the other main character in the story, she and Cowboy are partners because they have to be and friends when they can be. Um, is what she's referred to as a dirt girl. She's someone that grew up in poverty and the poverty on Earth. She grew up after the Rock Wars, or during the Rock Wars, um, and Earth had really ceased to be. It had become a colony of the orbitals, and it was treated just as most of the 19th century colonies are, which is to say, not very well at all. They were exploited for their resources, and people were left on the outside looking in. And Sarah's goal is to get her and her brother up to the orbitals, and she's willing to do just about anything to make that happen. um, and then there's her brother, who's, I think he's one of the most challenging parts of the story, because Sarah is willing to do anything for her and her brother, and her brother doesn't really contribute anything aside from stealing from Sarah and betraying her so that she can show him that she loves him by forgiving him. Dodd, the name of her brother, is really, to me, one of the most difficult parts of the story. With a couple of exceptions, every time I read this book, I'm like, oh my God, how does she put up with this? Yes, family is family, but someone who, constantly, deliberately steals from you, ignores you, and gets themselves into extreme trouble by ignoring you, which you then have to, bail them out by expending most of the money that you've tried to stock up to accomplish your goal of getting them away from this horrible poverty. It's just like, I get that people do things for love and they do stupid things for love, but pretty much almost every time I've read it, with like one or two exceptions, I'm like, he's gone too far. There's a certain line when you have to shift into tough love mode and say, no, I'm not going to bail you out of this situation. I'm not going to set my plans for my life back for the whatever number time it is, because you keep screwing up just so that I can bail you out, so that you know that I love you. You have to stop. Um, Unfortunately, she never does. And to me, that is the most challenging thing about reading the book. Is every time he's on screen, metaphorically speaking, I just grit my teeth and I'm just like, oh my God, I hate him. Luckily I've read the book a lot, so I can kind of skip past the parts he's in it. But um, yeah. Aside from that, though, it is an absolutely awesome cyberpunk book. Again, one of the foundational cyberpunk books out there. It is a cyberpunk world where you have poverty next to wealth, and you have fancy drugs. You have, people that make their living. In Hardwired is called In the Face, the interface, and it's abbreviated as the face. So people who make their living accessing computers for criminal, and well, mostly in this book, they're mostly criminal purposes. And it's a really compelling world that lays out, the orbitals have developed power. Earth is now a backwater, and you've got these people trying to make the best living they can in this backwater. And there are people that serve as factors or agents of the orbitals, and so they have certain power and influence among Earth. But on the other hand, there are certain people that resent them for that, and so they have to take measures to not get killed. And you've got people that are living in poverty and struggling to get out of it. And Cowboy and Sarah, have an interlude where they end up um, mostly hiking, but occasionally hitching rides across a fractured United States, where every state border is a guarded, and there are various customs agents to prevent traffic from going across. And their story, it's good because it's an interlude, because it gets Sarah away from Dodd and gets him off screen, and she and Cowboy develop a relationship. Partners partners because they can, friends when it's possible. I don't remember the exact wording. I haven't reread the book within a year or two, but um, you know they like each other and they want to be friends, but because of their situation, where Sarah's trying to become become a member of the orbitals, and Cowboy's trying to overthrow them, they're kind of at odds. And yet somehow they're forced to make a journey together, and they, roughly speaking, put that aside. And it's the interlude in the middle of the book. It's just really enjoyable to read because it's a story, and there are things happening. It's not like they're just going to sit and talk to each other for 100 pages. There are things going on, and those things advance the purposes of the story and so forth. But it's a fun little interlude in the middle of the story. And it's a story about people fighting against hopeless odds in this cyberpunk-ish world. And how they are able to, use their resources. So again, excellent book, strongly recommended it. One of the founding books in cyberpunk, along with Neuromancer and Snow Crash, and it's one of the better books out there. It's very evocative. The first time I read it, I just ended up spending probably most of a Saturday reading it. And then when I put the book down and walked outside, it was, I was looking around at the world. I'm like, well, this isn't right. This isn't how the world should be, because I had gotten myself so deeply immersed into the book. So great book, and I've read it multiple times. It aged very well. Obviously we haven't developed orbital technology, but aside from that, the idea of the rich being in a separate world, whether it's a physically removed world as it is in Hardwired, or just different locations as it is today, and then the poor, trying to make the best out of their lives with their goals that are, looked down on by the rich. So, excellent book. Strongly recommend it. As always, if you've come this far, I appreciate your time, and I will talk to you later.